Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I want to do a quick spoiler discussion and review of Dexter New Blood Episode 1. This is the prequel series for Dexter that has just come out. We only have one episode. It's dropping weekly, so if this video does well, I will cover every single episode. So previously we had Dexter, its original 8 seasons. Then we had Dexter New Blood, which was a sequel series. Now we have Dexter Original Sin, again a prequel. And I think what takes this season over the line for me, I was originally kind of concerned. I was worried we were getting like the Star Warsification of Dexter, but I think the thing that gives me hope is the fact that Michael C. Hall is actually involved and the original showrunner is involved as well. But Dexter, Michael C. Hall, is actually doing the internal narration of this new actor playing Dexter. It's really quite interesting. I've seen a lot of people say that they're not sure how well this kind of works together because you'll have the new actor kind of talk in scene, right? And then his inner monologue will be Michael C. Hall. I think it's awesome. You know, I think it adds this sense of like, these are just a bunch of flashbacks that could have been in the original Dexter series we're seeing play out. I really, really like that. Now, let's kind of just address the elephants in the room, I suppose. Let's talk about the younger casting. So this new guy we have playing Dexter, not familiar with any of their names, going to be completely honest with you. I'll put them up on the screen. But the guy playing the new Dexter, the young Dexter, I actually think he's kind of good. He does show maybe a bit too much emotion, but I'm sure as the season progresses, we'll kind of get used to it. But no, I think he's good. I think the wig is kind of goofy for this first episode, but once he takes it off, I kind of get Michael C. Hall vibes. I actually think it's quite good casting. And look, I don't think he is as inherently cool in his physicality as Michael C. Hall was, but I think Michael C. Hall was also older and more sure of himself and more built, right? Like that was part of his character, so I'm sure we'll get to that. But I think the intro section, the fantastic intro section, minus one thing, which we will get into, I think the initial intro section does make him look like a genuinely kind of cool young Dexter, in my opinion. And when we see him finally get to Miami Metro, I was kind of here for it. I was like, ooh. Also, once he gets into his actual kind of first kill, his original sin, I was like, oh, this is starting to feel a bit like Dexter. I think whenever he's showing kind of like dark, morbid curiosity, it has a really solid feel. Also, there are some things that are maybe new or maybe retconny, depending how you want to look at it, that I kind of found interesting. You know, in the original Dexter, right, the idea was that he was destined to be a serial killer. He had these compulsions that he couldn't control. And so his dad kind of folded and went, well, you know what? If you're going to do this, at least kill bad people, and instilled him with this code, right? And I think always the idea of the show was that if Dexter didn't have that training or brainwashing, whatever you want to call it, if that dad didn't instill it in him, Dexter would have been a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Ted Bundy. He would have just killed for sport, killed for fun. Dexter is not a vigilante, is not a virtuous person, at least in the beginning. He kind of becomes that as the show goes on and starts seeing these people as people he's actually doing God's work for taking out. But initially it's just kind of like, oh, well, okay, if I'm going to kill people, I'm going to kill people that fit a certain code. But that wasn't, in my opinion, something that he kind of wanted to do initially. And I think what's interesting here and what backs that up is the idea that young Dexter is looking up to Ted Bundy and idolizing like actual dark, twisted serial killers. He's not seen there looking at vigilantes that, you know, used violent crime to kind of, enact justice in society. He's looking up to the type of people that he will end up looking down on, morally judging, and would put on his table. You know, he has like a titty mag, and the joke is kind of like, instead of looking at naked girls, he's looking up to serial killers. And I find it really interesting that at some point he was doing that, only to become someone who then looks down on them and hunts them out for sport, and eventually kind of gets on board with the idea of ridding the world of monsters like that. I just found that like a really interesting plot point. It's not all good though. Like I will say, there is some really wonky shit in this show. So first off, the show for the most part looks incredible.
They say it takes a village to raise a killer.
I can get my satisfaction.
It's incredibly stylized. It actually reminds me a lot of kind of like Ryan Murphy's Monsters series with really impressive camera work and cinematography at times. But oh my God, the opening section, the CGI of the car looked absolutely stupid. I was genuinely wondering if it was going to be like a gag where it cuts to like a video game someone's playing. But no, like the opening scene where it's Dexter waking up in this car looks so fucking shit. And then it has this flashback projected onto a window. I get what they were going for, but this section genuinely looks like it belongs in the Polar Express. I have no clue what they're doing. While we're on criticisms, I think young Deborah Morgan has her moments, but my God, some of the line delivery here is shocking from her. I don't want to rag on her too hard, but like, Jesus Christ.
I had too much to drink. He said that I could lie down in there.
In the real world, where real women with real tits actually exist.
I hope she gets better as the season goes on. Also, on top of that, as much as I'm finding young Dexter interesting and watching kind of like the exploration of where these urges came from and how they initially presented, the conversations about the dark urges he's having are so shit.
It didn't give me the feeling I thought it would. Slicing into bodies would be enough. I don't know. I'm worried the plan isn't going to satisfy my urges.
It has to.
Like, so poorly written. It feels like your friend's first draft of a play that they're showing you, or it feels like Dexter fan fiction. Like these scenes at the dinner table where he's like, Dad, I'm having urges again. Cutting up the bodies was not enough. Like, it feels really first draft. I can't really explain it better than that. But like later on, right, there's this section where they're walking through the woods and he goes like, Dad, I'm having urges again. It's not enough. I feel like I'm going to crack. And it's just like something about the delivery combined with the poor writing just really feels stilted. And it's a shame because eventually it gets to this conversation where he's like, oh, you know, last night I had this really kind of confronting moment where I was beating up this guy that was doing something to Deb, and then I looked over at a knife and like I felt compelled to stab him. And I feel like if the scene just opened with that as the conversation, that feels way more natural, right? Like it's an actual example you can bring up and be like, Dad, last night, like I almost want to kill someone. Similar to the conversation Harrison has with kind of his girlfriend in New Blood, or the conversation Harrison has with Dexter about his urges. I felt like they were kind of the example of how to write a scene like that. And I feel like in Original Sin, yeah, it just feels like, it almost kind of feels like a porn parody of Dexter. That's the best way I can explain it.
Animals aren't enough. Feelings I can't ignore them. Taught me the code to help me channel my urges. What's the point if I can't even use it?
And a lot of this does. It's kind of like weird lookalikes and sets that almost look like the original Dexter, but just slightly off. And you start being like, are all of these people going to start sleeping together or something? Like, what's going on with the weird presentation and some of the weird performances? While we're talking about that, there is a mannequin for Harry, right? Dexter's adoptive father. We get a flashback where his son drowns, right? And that's why it kind of gets really attached to Dexter as an adoptive kid. And my God, all right, the scene where Christian Slater's Harry jumps into the pool and picks up what is clearly a dummy. It looks like a dummy that you like, you know, learn CPR on, and then proceeds to try to do CPR on it, which didn't help. Looked terrible. But the thing is, it's a shame. It's a shame because the casting of young Masuka and young Batista, Mr. La Passion himself.
She don't mind who I flirt with as long as I bring home La Pasión. La Pasión. Yeah, it keeps the relationship alive.
Is incredible. It's really good casting and they seem like good actors, not just lookalikes. Also, like stacked cast, Christian Slater, Patrick Dempsey, Sarah Michelle Gellar, like Michael C. Hall's back. Like it's really cool that we got like such a great cast. And when it's Dexter in Miami Metro, and even like the promotional image where it's like they're trying to catch killer without realizing one's being made under their eyes or under their noses, whatever the fuck the promotional kind of tagline was, I think is a really interesting idea. I know a lot of people have said that maybe this show shouldn't exist, but I actually think where this episode ends, I'm kind of curious to see Dexter kind of learn how to be a murderer right under the noses of these people that he works with. I also thought the exploration of Harry's addiction to junk food and his health crisis was quite fascinating, like genuinely like well done. And bruh, I'm going to be real. I know we got this flashback already in the original series. Like I know we did. but I actually loved the whole section where Dexter started realizing that this evil nurse may or may not have been a serial killer and was poisoning her patients, and realized that she was poisoning Harry, and basically went, "Yo, Dad, can I kill this chick for you?" And it was kind of fucking cool when Harry was like, "Yeah, do it." Was it not? A bit weird that he didn't seem that fazed by it, but then he did proceed to cry after. I find Harry in both versions of the show cooked as, like, can I just say, like, really fucking bizarre, just like a weird unit, right? Like, he's really strange. And maybe that's the point, right? Like, Dexter got paired up with someone who would, you know, out of his own kind of like guilt of not being a successful father, let Dexter, you know, kind of have this code and be a serial killer. And it's kind of hilarious to me, but yeah, I don't know, whatever. That's a conversation for another day. I need to rewatch the original series before I comment on that too much, but his presentation in Original Sin is kind of hilarious. Like, I just love that he's seen there afterwards being like, okay, I did technically say you could do this, but Jesus Christ. I did really like this episode overall. By the end of it, I was actually kind of keen to see, you know, Dexter try and learn to kill. I will say this first kill felt a little neutered. I felt like a cutaway, especially compared to Dexter New Blood, which was surprisingly a bit gorier than the original Dexter. I feel like this one felt a bit tame, did it not? It kind of cut away, and maybe it's because it was a female on the table, and typically media is a bit more concerned about violence against women, but yeah, I don't know, it felt a bit tame, not to sound like a complete sicko, but no, I quite enjoyed what this show was setting up, especially with this kind of new ensemble cast in Miami Metro. I also thought that when this new Dexter was leaning into his dark urges, his dark passenger, it was kind of compelling. I also thought the cringe lines were back. If you remember the original Dexter, oftentimes Dexter would do something like look at a donut and be like, "Empty inside, just like me." You know, and it was really goofy and cringy for otherwise a great show, especially in those first 4 seasons. And it's great to see that these cringy lines are back and back in full force. I also must say, the opening credits of this show give me a lot of faith. I really, really liked them. I thought they were awesome. I liked that they were clunky. I also liked all these additional shots of Harry kind of looking over his shoulder and keeping a watchful eye on his adoptive son, who he's helping become a fucking weird serial killer. I think that's cool. What I will say is what isn't cool is the Roblox eating sound effect being put over the shot of him. What the fuck are we doing? And first off, this isn't modern day Dexter with like iPhones and Roblox in universe. So why are we using this? Like, it doesn't even work as a joke. Why would you add it? We know he's eating. What the fuck? Get rid of it. Get rid of it immediately. I assume Roblox didn't invent this sound and it was like a sound of a stock thing and they've used it without realizing where it's used. But even if you didn't know where it was used, it's a goofy ass sound effect. We don't need it. Just record some Foley of someone eating, for fuck's sake. Like, I know I seem a bit touchy about this, but like, ew. Brother, ugh. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I've probably forgotten some things to cover, but yeah, I really liked about 60 to 70% of this episode. I just need Deb to be a bit of a better actress and some of the writing to be a bit better. And if we get that, I think this show is actually going to be quite good. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I will be talking about Dexter New Blood as well. I'm currently rewatching that. So when that's done, I'll do a full video talking about whether Dexter New Blood is as good or as bad as what everyone thinks it is. And I'll also be covering every episode of Dexter New Blood week to week. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day. Just while I've got you, I do memberships for this channel. I would love if you could consider getting one. It really helps out the channel and helps me grow. What's included in the membership is once a week, I am doing a sort of book club where I'm talking about a TV show. Currently, I'm covering Tell Me Lies Season 1. I'm covering an episode a week. After that, I'll let members vote on which show I cover next. On top of that, every 3 to 4 weeks, I also do a quick podcast talking about everything I've seen and watched that I don't have time to do full videos on. So you basically get my thoughts on everything I've seen and watched. This is all for a small cost and it really helps the channel. If this sounds interesting to you at all, please consider getting a membership. Thank you so much and back